Okay, we're going to get going right now. This is the future of electrification. And the panel is about, that the U.S. is experiencing an incredible amount of increase in power demand. There's a lot of strain on the grid. AI is pushing data center growth. It's also forcing additional electricity demand with respect to EV charging stations. There's demographic growth. The grid itself is under strain. And so we're going to start talking about all the things that have to occur in the future of electrification. So I'll just introduce you to the panel very quickly. We've got Uman Shahidi. He's co-founder and CEO of EV Passport. Then we have Paul Zederbaum. He's the practice leader at McGriff, which is a private equity risk advisors practice leader. And then we've got Bryce Susi, and he's a principal at Argo, which is an infrastructure investment fund, and he sits on the board of ICE Energy. So we'll just start getting into it right now, and we'll ask questions down. So we'll start with Bryce. If you could give a quick intro into what ICE Energy does, how it helps utilities manage the energy demand, soften it out, and what place it has in the role of the future of electrification.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ira. So just zooming out a bit, we're an infrastructure private equity fund based in New York. We invest across the energy transition landscape from power generation. We've got a large-scale hydroelectric portfolio, for example, all the way to data centers. We are the majority owner of a data center business called TierPoint. And I think giving one example of what's happening on the demand side, we see in data centers a need for 20 gigawatts of power per year in addition to today's current demand to actually fuel the AI training and querying that's required for all the things that the past panel was hitting on. And this is driving, one of the main demand sources we're going to talk about today, where we're informed about that, and that has driven a decision for us to invest downstream of that in a business called ICE Energy. ICE Energy is a technology that's been around for 20 years. It is proven, and it is at its core a peak load shifting technology, which allows you to choose the time of day when you consume electricity for cooling demand. And this is a massive trend where we actually have a technology that is creating capacity for the grid. In California, we get paid for that. Capacity is a commodity, so we actually create value for the utility. Well, we actually save the end user money on their utility bills as a result of shaving peak demand charges for businesses, or we also save people money by consuming power in a cheaper time of day. Like in California, time of use rates are essentially everywhere, so it's cheaper to consume power in the off-peak time of day. From a climate tech perspective, we think this is the ultimate example of a technology that's here today. It is yielding value for the built world, and it is saving end customers money. Generally, our customers save 15 to 20% on their utility bills. They realize that over a 20-year useful life of the technology, and it's an example of essentially a win-win where we're not actually charging the customer more to be green or to provide this capacity to the grid. We're creating system benefits.
Okay, great, thank you. And then Uman, if you just give me a little background on yourself and EV Passport and how that's playing out in terms of the charging world.
Sure, you bet. Can you all hear me? All right. You all look a little lethargic, so I'm going to shake things up. I don't know if you got a lunch, thing going on, but what we're going to do is we're going to actually make this interactive before I dive in and tell you a little bit about myself. One, who drives an electric car here? Raise your hand. Like, hi, I don't know if you're low energy, you get a cup of coffee, come on, reach for the sky. Okay, so maybe about 10%, maybe 5%, 5 to 10% of the room. Who drives a plug-in hybrid? Okay, one person, thank you for your service. Okay, let me ask a more bold question. Who believes in electrification? Okay, some people didn't raise their hand. Are you lazy or you just don't believe in it? Shout out, any ideas? Hydrogen, okay, interesting bet. Cars that blow up, sure. I know. But we can debate that. But I do believe in hydrogen. I think hydrogen's great. I say that tongue in cheek. So the reason I asked is because I want to know my audience. I want to understand who we're talking to, why this makes a difference. So my journey is a little bit unique. I was a finance person and then went to technology. I was at Oracle and Salesforce. And then when the pandemic rolled around and I didn't want to do a sourdough recipe or perfect my TikTok dance, I decided to tackle infrastructure. And so in 2020, I decided to co-found EV Passport. And we had a simple mission in mind, which was how do we remove the barriers for electrification? So, which gives me to an important question. When you drive, right, a gas car, there's a lot of complexity, said no one ever. It's pretty straightforward. But electrification somehow has all these barriers, and we need to simplify that process. And as you guys know, there's a bunch of finance people in this room, and some private equity people, and I'm looking around. It's really easy to make things complicated, but to actually simplify them is incredibly difficult. And so that's what we set out to do. And we, went from a slide deck in 2020 to operating in 35 states, 3 countries, thousands of chargers in our network, and we've energized over 10 million miles for drivers. And last year we raised $200 million to support that endeavor. But our work isn't just done. And part of the reason why I'm here and partnering with some amazing people, like Bryce and the work he's doing at ICE Energy, is that saving the planet is good business. The concept of ESG and, shaming and guilting us, that's not going to get us there. The market's on. And that's where the opportunity is, bridging the gap between our values and purpose and the technology that's going to get us there. And along the way, we're going to do well and create good. And so my focus of today's conversation is how do we create those opportunities and why electrification is going to create business value impact for all of us.
Okay, great, thank you. Paul, you're coming at this with a little different angle, so you don't have a company that's in the space, but without you and your advisory business from the risk side, capital won't be committed to the space. So if you could explain how you help companies mitigate their risk, look at investments, and provide advisory work.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to be the wet blanket, as the risk guy that's pointing out all the negatives. But work at McGriff. McGriff is a large risk advisor, works with companies of all sizes and all industries. We do have areas of industry specialization, including energy and power gen, where we're recognized as one of the market leaders. My team works primarily with, I lead the M&A practice, and our teams work both with buyers of companies, whether that's private equity or otherwise, and one of our main goals in the pre-transaction phase is to perform due diligence and understand some of these emerging risk factors that, we're insurance, we're not as smart as a lot of the people in the room, but and we're probably more conservative. But our job as kind of an advisory role before you get to an insurance company who just says, hey, I don't understand this, I'm going to walk away and not provide that capital risk transfer that allows for the overall operation of a company or the economy to function in the way that it does, or to charge you a really high premium for it because they don't understand it. It's our job to give a little bit of perspective, both property and casualty, the human capital side, employee benefits. There's all different components as well. And then working once one of our clients, an investor, makes engages with this type of investment or asset class, then okay, how do we utilize the insurance, the risk transfer, risk management functions in a way or in ways that can make sure that there's a enterprise value creation, and we're helping to create something high return on investment at the end.
Great. Now, each of you are very well steeped in the details of your own businesses. They're all different, and you've been deep into your businesses since you've started this journey. Tell me something that's been surprising since you've got into it. We'll start with Uman.
What a loaded question. So many things. I think the most important piece, there's a lot of private equity people in the room, and there's all, we keep using the same buzzwords, but the thing that I want to gravitate towards, especially when it comes to electrification, it's capital intensive, but it takes just sheer hard work, right? I mean, don't forget, in order to electrify, you're going to have to be innovative. You're going to have to, take a little more risk, and you're going to have to be open with new ideas and new concepts. I so often preach that this moment, the fifth industrial revolution, which is where electrification sits, is really centered around the harmony between purpose and technology, but also it's more about business innovation than product innovation. All the things that we have in front of us to drive electrification are at our disposal. I mean, Bryce just mentioned it earlier, some of the work that ICE Energy is doing, they have a 20-year technology. I mean, EV Passport, we didn't create EV charging. We're not creating induction charging. What we did is we put together certain solutions and drove software as a differentiating factor. And all the tools are at our disposal. And I think when we look at the investment in this space in the electrification process, we have to be able to create better harmony and understand how impact and processes need to be disrupted and changed, and think more methodically about them.
So I'm going to give Paul a bit of a push here on the insurance side, which you might be surprised to hear my answer is ensuring distributed energy infrastructure and creating and priming that market, I'd say, is one of the most surprising things that I've found in the past 5 years as I've been involved in ICE Energy. So fundamentally, we create virtual power plants, which means currently in Orange County, California, we operate around 500 ICE Bear units, which are providing peak load shifting for Southern California Edison from 2 to 6 p.m. every day. These units, I think thinking about the barriers to deploying a technology like, for climate reasons, like climate tech, you may think, oh, the issues are operations. We have 100 million operating hours on our units. You might think it's economics. We qualified for the ITC. We spent a lot of time in Washington, and because we're made in the United States, we qualify for a 40% ITC, and we have brought down our paybacks inside of 4 years. Generally, our customers experience over a 20% IRR on their investment in our technology. The actual thing that we got wrong in our underwriting forecast was how much it was going to cost to insure the technology, where we had to explain to the risk and insurance market, we actually have and own a unit on 100 rooftops in Southern California, and then thinking about what happens when there's an earthquake or something that, that's, to us, it's actually a diversified pool of an asset that is very resilient and important for the utility, and over time, we've brought the insurers along for the journey, and they now understand the value and diversification of what this does for the grid and why it's actually solving a huge risk factor for the utility as well. Our program in Southern California is originally the result of the San Onofre nuclear plant shutting down, and there was extreme capacity issues and to the substations that we serve, and I think this is all part of how we bring down the barriers to actually deploy innovative technologies. And just one more plug for our technology doesn't actually require anything but a simple building permit, so we have no interconnection wait. Don't have to wait 4 or 5 years like you would for traditional lithium-ion storage, which we think is great. We like to partner with those people, but this insurance is one of the barriers we've now overcome. But it's what it takes to bring technologies like this to market.
And that's a great segue, Bryce, because the education process for insurance or just understanding the complexities from non-technical people who are then trying to translate a very, whether it's technological solution or hardware, software solution that is just new, something that didn't really exist 15 years ago. And now, we come across surprises every day, because what we are seeing on behalf of our clients is things they just, they don't know what they don't know until we start to uncover through a diligence process. I've got 2 quick examples where they're related to this. A retail operation that is running, strip malls and, just very innocuous type of exposures. But they went out and they were going to buy another portfolio, similar across what they're already doing. But this new target company had a bunch of charging stations on. And, we started to dig in and ask them just, hey, do you understand like what type of liabilities you're picking up? And it's simple liabilities. It's a different type of attraction to, the foot traffic that they were having coming to their stores. It's people coming in off hours. Does it create a fire hazard that wasn't there previously, and maybe they needed to be using EV Passport products? But it was just questions that they didn't understand, and they still went forward with the deal. But it's something also that then has trickle-down effects of, well, does that change your ability to go out and get insurance? Because insurance underwriters often see very black and white, and that checked the box of, hey, yes, we do have charging stations on our facilities, on our property, may disqualify them from even considering it. So then that limits your pool. It drives up insurance expenses even higher. Second one was an example where it was kind of old electric technology. We had a private equity sponsor that was looking to buy a district energy system in the Midwest. It was a facility that was over 100 years old. They were severely underinsured. The significant increases in the demand for power in this area, which was undergoing some significant increases for a lot of reasons. They were underinsured. They were underprotected in terms of like sprinklers. So if they were to have an overload on the system, if they were to have a fire caused, again, this is just old school risks that they need to figure out a way to mitigate or transfer, and they were failing in both. It was going to be another $1 million of insurance premiums to get them up to what would adequately protect in the modeling that we had for a large fire, and it was going to cost them over another $1.5 million to put in foam spray sprinklers. And that $2.5 million initial investment kind of blew up when you start applying the multiples, and they ended up not going into that transaction.
And Paul, you're getting them excited about electrification with all the additional costs that they have to incur, by the way. I say that tongue in cheek. Point being is they're open-minded, so don't be scared by electrification. I think there's ways that the insurance company.
I think that there's a opportunity for solid companies, just like with any insurance decision. The cream rises to the top, and it's working with an advisor who can advise on the risks, but then also position you all with the insurance market so that you get the benefit of that favorable kind of stature.
And living in Santa Monica, for us, that makes you oat milk.
And going to the next phase, so when we think about the change in administration, there's clearly going to be a change in policy. We don't know what it is. And when you think about looking at it of signal versus noise and what's going to occur regardless of who's in office, because in the grand scheme of the planet and electrification, 4 years isn't really that much. So how are you thinking about things with the recent election? We'll start with you.
Sure. Well, we're in Palm Beach, so you can't, say Palm Beach without saying Trump. It's a really, really interesting moment. I think that for the first time ever, I don't believe geopolitical factors play a role in the way we're looking at creating electrification and sustainable measures. And the reason for that is because it's not a fad anymore, right? When Ferrari decides to make a plug-in hybrid, this is a real moment, right? And I think, and I'm not saying that just because I love cars, I'm saying that because every single major automaker is making investments in the electrification space. Every single company is looking at ways to create sustainable measures, not because, of, a feel-good tree-hugging moment, but rather the business value impact, cost reductions. If we were able to get to our electrification goals from an EV adoption standpoint, that replaces over 6 million barrels of oil by 2030. Think about that for a second. That has massive effects, right, in the marketplace and across the board. So, I'm quite bullish about what's ahead. And whether you're a Democrat or whether you're a Republican, whether you're red or blue, I believe that this moment of sustainable measure is really for all. And the capital markets now more than ever are willing to be creative and are coming up with solutions to deploy this necessary capital, because you can create well and or I should say you can create good and do well at the same time, but you can do it in a way that delivers real impact on your balance sheet, which I know a lot of the folks here care about.
I think who said it best before is, when we think about supporting the energy transition, it's fundamentally good business. It's not emotional, it's not political. It makes sense because looking, a statistic I referenced earlier, the demand for AI data centers through 2030, that is purely driving business value. People have recognized it is cost prohibitive to match lithium-ion batteries and solar together. It's just not going to be, it's not in the equation of actually providing AI data centers that are carbon neutral. It's way too expensive. So that's why the conversation has shifted so fast to nuclear. And nuclear is the ultimate example to me of, something that's bipartisan, and we could talk all day about the barriers of why nuclear hasn't been deployed historically, but there are small modular companies that will support that transition. Those are investments that are extremely attractive from an economic standpoint, that have the same fundamentals of what, the businesses that Hu and I are here today to represent. And that's something that we frankly need to cut through the bullshit and talk about actual economics and actual business value creation and stop being so divided as a country. It's actually ridiculous, I think.
So that's a technical term you
let's
just
go.
used. Yes.
And then just going to, a personal view of mine is, regardless of what party's in power, I believe that the industrial base in the United States is going to be increased, that there's going to be reshoring, a considerable amount of manufacturing capacity coming back on board, and also from a more protectionist standpoint, even not just this administration. So, and Bryce, one of the things that I think was interesting about ICE Energy is that it's made in America in terms of the product, and how do you think that positions the company a little better, and how does that tie into what would be the future of the industrial base here?
Great question. I said we shouldn't get emotional, but both my grandfathers growing up worked in a mill in Maine, and bringing jobs back to the United States is something I firmly believe in. I think we need to make stuff here again. I think that also can get super political, and people can talk about why certain jobs, AI will be amazing, but we do need to make stuff, and we fundamentally need to do it here for many reasons. Specifically, from ICE Energy standpoint, we make everything in the United States. Everything is made from recycled materials. There are no rare earth metals that are used in our supply chain. We also are partnered with, we aren't going to talk bad about lithium ion, because we believe there's a huge future in combining thermal, we call our technology thermal batteries, with traditional batteries. And that will actually create the most value for the grid overall. It'll allow us to deploy more renewable energy. But we've been able to deploy a technology and prove that we can make it here at a cost that is competitive. It actually is 30 to 50% cheaper than the levelized cost of storage for lithium-ion batteries. Part of that is because we have a 20-year useful life with no degradation. There's no efficiency loss over time. It could be a specific case to our technology, but there's definitely more cases out there and ways to do it here, to use local supply chains and to grow. And I think that's also something that this administration, for better or worse, whatever your political views are, there are since the IRA was passed, right, there's $100 billion of new investments in terms of making all of these technologies here, and it's something it's here to stay.
And we have about 3 minutes left. Go down. We'll start with Paul. If you're going to make a prediction of what the future of electrification looks like in the next 4 to 10 years, what would be something that you would think is surprising or that you've got high confidence in?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, again, being kind of from the outside looking in, but how it affects the broad groups that we work with, I I do think the electric vehicle uptake on a commercial side, so trucking, trucking and auto liability. Everyone in this room, if you have a car, you're paying more for insurance than you used to for your personal vehicles. When you take that in the short term, that may have a move towards electric vehicles, especially electric trucks, may drive the initial costs up because it's more expensive to repair. Every time you go in for a couple sensors, it's several $1,000s. The average cost per the NAIC is over $500 more per unit per vehicle per year. So if you're a fleet that has 1,000 trucks, that starts to add up just to have electrical vehicles. But the long-term potential, I think, is really going to drive insurance costs down significantly, especially as we start to move for more autonomous functionality for those vehicles, which we tend to see more on the EV side. It's going to reduce the number of accidents. It's going to remove a lot of the liability that falls to companies. So we're optimistic that the trucking industry will be dramatically improved from a risk perspective.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. I respectfully disagree with you. The cost of electrification is dramatically, so many fleets have electrified, and I'm in this business. The cost of running an electric fleet is so much cheaper. Those sensors are a fraction of cost, and they last longer. There's no maintenance. So I think the insurance companies need to take another look at how they're underwriting, because this is not true. Look at Takeda Pharmaceutical, State Farm, the list goes on. That is absolutely not true. I completely disagree with you.
I'm reporting from the National Association of
And I'm telling you,
Commissioners.
Bloomberg just did a report on electrification and the costs associated with it. Owning a fleet, a passenger fleet, or a semi truck, the cost of it is less, not just on the short term, but on the long term. I'm just.
And that may be I'm speaking specifically around insurance.
And where do you think that cost curve bends in the future? So in terms of a differential going down the electric route.
There's no maintenance. Those of you who raised your hand who drive an electric car, when was the last time you got an oil change? Never. You're eliminating that cost. The things that you're taking care of are your wheels, right? There's no, all the ancillary things that create costs, aren't there. Now, I'm not saying go drive electric, right? That's not what I'm lobbying for. What I'm saying is that the cost is less from an operation standpoint. And the future is bright for that. But it's not just electrification of cars. I think everything has an opportunity to be able to rethink its impact on the grid, right? All the data centers that we're building, we need to create more power, and we need to come up with a better strategy for being able to scale that. And that's my humble opinion.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up there. We're out of time. You can come up afterwards and ask questions. And anyone interested in the pay-per-view fight, just come up to me afterwards.